President Trump says he's cutting off trade talks with neighbour Canada immediately. It's over plans by the Canadians to enforce a new tax targeting big tech companies, which is predicted to cost them more than $7 billion over the next 5 years. Both US Republicans and Democrats have criticised the levy as it mainly affects American companies such as Google and Amazon. Mr. Trump said he would announce new tariffs on Canadian exports within a week. The Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said Ottawa would continue to conduct trade negotiations in the best interests of Canadians. The nations had been working to agree a trade deal by mid-July.
They did something with our tech companies today trying to copy Europe. You know, they copied Europe. It's not going to work out well for Europe either, and it's not going to work out well for Canada. They were foolish to do it. So I said we're going to stop all negotiations with Canada right now until they straighten out their act.
Well, I've been discussing this with our North America correspondent Jake Kwan, who's in Washington. I started by asking him about the digital service tax.
So this is a tax on digital goods that are being sold to Canadians or money being made in the Canadian market. The idea is that when you sell goods to Canadians, you tax that. So why not the digital intangible items like, when you're selling Google ads or YouTube, Spotify, or any other digital intangible goods. Now, Canadian government has said that they will tax these companies 3%, which will raise billions of dollars for the Canadian government. And this was already implemented last year, but the first day of the payment was coming up this Monday. Now, this is something that exists in many other countries. This is not just a Canadian tax. European countries have them, including the United Kingdom. But as you can imagine, American companies were not very happy about it. And of course, not just Trump administration, but Biden administration also had problem with this.
President Trump, we heard strong words from him. He is even threatening new tariffs, isn't he?
Certainly, and he called it a direct and blatant attack on the United States and said that, new tariffs on Canada will be revealed next week. And this is a huge issue for these two countries because they are each other's biggest trade partner. And America is, of course, the biggest export destination for Canadians. And what's at stake is really the price of goods for consumers on both sides of the border. You can imagine prices rising for anything between grocery items to cars.
So what's been the reaction from Canada? Because Prime Minister Mark Carney and President Trump, they had been talking.
Yeah, for Prime Minister Carney, he brushed it off, saying that the negotiation will continue. But by all indication, the two leaders enjoyed a good relationship. President Trump, of course, did not enjoy as good of a relationship with Mr. Carney's predecessor. But when Prime Minister visited Washington, as well as when they met at the G7 this month, they looked like they were getting on well. So by all indication, it looked like the two countries were headed to having a trade deal by mid-July, which was when the deadline for getting a deal was.
And I assume you talk about that deadline. A lot of other countries who are trying to negotiate with President Trump over tariffs will be watching this very carefully.
Certainly, I think the suspension of the talks with them, it really highlights how difficult it might be to get these trade deals with these countries. President Trump and the White House promised that they will get 90 deals in 90 days, but we're almost there at the deadline of that 90 days. And come July 9th, it does not look like there are many of these deals going to be signed. America has a deal with UK and has somewhat of a deal with China. But now what the White House and his secretaries are saying is that there may have to be an extension. And President Trump also seemed somewhat pessimistic there might be a deal at the end of this extension, saying that perhaps America may have to slap a flat 25% tariffs on all countries around the world.